would be a second. Let me know if you guys can all hear. I'm sorry, see my screen. Okay, cool. So Neil asked me to run a bit of a CV workshop with you guys. I run this for the Signal ICT grad school as well. So I've taken my presentation I do for them and changed it slightly for Canterbury Tech. Obviously the information is changing all the time with some of the stats that I'm going to share, so I've tried to put the latest information in there. So yeah, my name is Rachel. I work for Career Technology Recruitment in Christchurch. So my role, I specialise in dev and BI recruitment, but we work with people all over the South Island. Yeah, so I will just run through where we are. So I'm just going to share with you some insights from Seek, some of the latest insights that we have here. So these are the laws of attraction, what attract people to roles in technology. So number one, not surprisingly, is salary and compensation. So that's quite important for candidates in this industry. Then the total sample group sampled. So the base salary assurance and bonus profit share opportunities stand out as a greater priority for people in tech. At number two is career and development opportunities, because in tech there's just so much that you can do. You can start off with, you know, in a junior role and move to a senior role. You can start off as a you're on a help desk and you might want to move into a developer. You know, it's pretty endless what you can do in the industry. And at number three is a little work-life balance, and I guess COVID's kind of shown us that as well, because everybody was thrown into working from home, where a lot of companies didn't necessarily support that, but they had to you know, carry on with their business over COVID. So yeah, a lot of flexible working hours, ability to work from home or work remotely as well. And I am seeing a few companies now when they're looking for staff that they're quite happy to have anybody remotely within New Zealand. Which is quite exciting, which is a bit of a shift from where it used to be. So I can't even see that. I've got that on my, sorry, give me a second. So the older millennial group, the 25 to 34 demographic, or the younger generation X, which is the 35 to 34, are more likely to live in metropolitan areas, so 80%, and have tertiary qualifications and earn more than $70,000. in tech. So I guess the drivers of attraction, this is a bit annoying because I can see everybody's video on my screen, so I've got to keep you moving around so I can read my screen. So if we look at the drivers of attraction, so obviously we've got salary and compensation, work-life balance, and career development opportunities. So this is from some of the research done by Seek, and you'll all be familiar with Seek, compared to the total market across all different industries, which is quite interesting. This is data probably actually from late last year, because I had a look the other day and they hadn't yet updated it. So that's the most recent data there is of that. And I guess like it's a little bit hard to read, but I guess you're looking at difficulty to source roles. So like from a early career point of view, you know, like computer operators, networking, testing roles, help desk and IT support roles. Yeah, a lot of those roles are quite easy to fill for that. Moderate to fill roles are like database and administration, developers, programmers, engineers, whether it's hardware or software, product management and things like that. And then if you're looking for harder to fill roles, architects and consultants. So that's some quite interesting information from Seek. And I'm happy to share this, Neil, afterwards if you want to put it on your wherever you want to store it, so people can have a look at it afterwards with the details. So if we're looking at on Seek, this data has come from as well over the job ads from the last 12 months for the advertised salaries in IT. The average annual perm salary was just sitting over $91,000, and obviously this is taken into account from junior roles right through to senior and management level, so probably is a little bit on the higher side. Contracting the temp, $555 a day, and yeah, $72 an hour. But it all really depends where you're at, sitting at in your career. Obviously, being early career, it would be a lot less than that. Okay, we'll move to the top 10 skills that IT employers in Christchurch want to recruit at the moment are software development, business analysts, testing and QA, support and help desk, networking infrastructure, digital cloud. A lot of companies are moving to the cloud now. As well, project management, agile architecture, and BI. And I've seen, like, in the last couple of years, quite a big shift in BI roles. A lot of companies wouldn't really support that. Why should we invest money in BI? And now they've started doing it. They're like, actually, we should have done this ages ago. So yeah, quite an interesting shift for that. Guess getting down. So I probably talk too fast because I feel like I'm talking to myself. If anyone has any questions, please do pipe up and we can answer them as we go, since we're just a small group. So these cover letters. A lot of people, it's always been the long-term contention whether people still write cover letters, yes or no, and everyone's of different opinions. But because we're sending CVs and applying for roles now electronically, we're often seeing people attach the cover letter along with it. You don't really need to do that. You can do one or the other. So perhaps use your cover letter in an attachment. Sorry, not an attachment, in the body of the email itself rather than an attachment. And obviously you attach your CV to that as well. How to write a cover letter. Now, this is quite interesting as a recruiter, and I guess Heather would probably attest to this as well from an internal perspective. Everyone writes cover letters differently. It's quite interesting. Sometimes we'll get job ads come through from Seek and they'll just have a couple of lines of why you should give them the job, not addressing you or anything. And it's like, that's not really enough, because obviously it's your chance to sell yourself and to make yourself stand out from the crowd, because you've got to think, an employer is getting lots of applications come in for a role. What's going to make you stand out and make them want to open your CV and see what you're all about? So I guess one thing to ensure is when you're writing a cover letter is that you need to ensure you address it correctly. I quite often get cover letters and it says, "Dear Mr. Rachel," and I'm like, okay, that didn't really work. So I guess you need to make sure you address it to the right person. If you're not really sure who you're going to address it to, always put like dear Sir, Madam. So obviously that leaves it open. So then under the greeting, make sure you put in the position details. For example, like you're writing to apply for the software developer role as advertised on Seek. They actually know what you're applying for. As an external recruiter, quite often I do get cover letters as well, which are completely irrelevant to the role that the person is applying for. And I don't know whether that's because maybe on Seek, they've got that stored on Seek sitting in behind you and they haven't checked before they've clicked send, or it's just a little bit of being lazy. So in the next paragraph, you need to explain your interest in the job and how you'll fit into the organisation. So this is your chance to really stand out and sell yourself. Be enthusiastic and use positive language. Link your skills and your experience to the role on offer. So in one paragraph, link your experience, skills and qualifications to the job. So use 2 or 3 key examples of why you'd be really good to that employer. And make sure you do your research of the company and show how your skills can be really useful to them. Companies really like it when you actually know about them, when you're talking to them. And it's something I always prepare people for in interviewing, is to make sure you research the company, who you're interviewing with, and actually what they do, and ask the employer to contact you. Like, say, I would enjoy the opportunity to discuss my application with you and how I could use my skills to benefit whatever company. Thank you for considering my application. So obviously you're thanking them for their time and that you look forward to hearing from them, and sign that off. That is there. In regards to CVs, again, everybody does these differently, but I mean, a CV shouldn't be hugely long, maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 pages at the most. You don't need your complete career history from when you first started your job, like 30 years ago, if it's not relevant to what you're doing nowadays. Doesn't matter so much. So your CV is what's going to help you get the job. It's your vital job search tool. And it's your chance to stand out from the crowd. So it tells an employer what you've done, what you're good at, and the aim of your CV at the end of the day is to get yourself an interview. Stand out. One of the things on your CV that is really, really important is a personal statement or a personal summary. So after, I'll show you a sample of a CV shortly. So you want to get straight to the point, because recruiters or employers don't like to read waffle. You need to provide evidence of your skills and experience, but be brief, don't overdo it. Just remember that you're marketing yourself and make your statement look purposeful. So you need to know what you're talking about. So we'll get on to the CV. This is actually a sample from my own CV. I've just pulled this off there. Kind of see a bit of a layout, but of course everybody's different, but you want to make it really clear and concise what you've done. So I've started off with my name at the top and then my personal details. So how are they actually going to contact me? And then you want to, as I was saying, like your personal summary type thing. So in my personal summary, I've put that I'm a self-motivated, trustworthy and highly efficient person who shows great initiative and is eager to further my career in whatever role. During my career, I've developed excellent organisational and time management and people management skills, which has reflected itself in my current and previous positions. I have the ability to work alongside and influence others and move forward towards a common goal of the company. The focus in all aspects of my work is to provide exceptional customer service and relationship management. My personal achievements in this area have been reaching and exceeding my own goals and that of the company. I thrive on understanding people's needs using my extensive communication skills to benefit the most important people, our customers and business partners. So that's kind of telling a little bit about me and a bit about my soft skills, perhaps what I could bring to a role. And then I'd probably put something like your skills, so things that are relevant to the role, that's been advertised, and obviously things, you may have other skills as well that aren't so relevant, but they're also tech skills, which could come in handy at the end of the day. And then I always like to see, this is my personal preference because I think it looks tidy and it stands out, an overview of your employment history. What dates, what organisation you worked for, and your position. And then when you go on to your employment history, so you've got your role you did, the company you worked for and the dates you worked there. Basically a little bit of a snapshot of what the role was, and then do some bullet points or something like your soft skills, your responsibilities and your achievement. What did you actually achieve in that role? So yeah, that's quite useful. I mean, everybody's different as long as you're clear and you give enough details. I know with my person I'm mentoring at the moment, I've helped her do her CV because it didn't stand out. So happy to offer any advice on that. From a skills point of view, there's different types of skills. So you've got your employability skills, things like the qualities and attitudes the employers are looking for in their workplace. You've got transferable skills, things you can take from one job to the other, and your specialist skills which relate to the job. So for your employability skills, things like self-management, teamwork, positive attitude, thinking skills, communication, willingness to learn and your resilience. So they're basically called soft skills. Transferable soft skills. So they're sometimes called transferable skills, which are your non-technical skills that are useful in a variety of different career paths. So unlike technical skills, they are specific to the job, like knowing a specific programming language, where soft skills come in handy across a variety of job titles and workplaces. So soft skills are more of a learned knowledge. They are behavioural traits that can help you grow in your career as you think outside the box, overcome obstacles and work with others. Communication skills, empathy and problem solving are just a few examples of the soft skills. So soft skills really matter in technology careers, as managers are always on the lookout for employees who bring transferable skills to the table. Soft skills are considered essential to the workplace, even in the technology industry. So what I'm trying to say, I guess, is employers highly value hard skills, but in the rapidly growing tech industry, you always need those soft skills to be able to keep up with the industry's latest demands, because tech is ever changing. And soft skills are especially important in the tech field, where employees must be careful to focus on the people a piece of technology serves, rather than getting lost in the technology itself. So soft skills provide critical context to why a technology should be implemented. Teams work best when this context is well understood, becoming motivated to meet the goals that have a purpose to the end user or the client. Although all soft skills are valuable, there are a few that can make you stand out from the crowd in the technology field, and they're essential soft skills that could help take your career a bit further as well. Things like communication, like technology, but they really need strong and clear communicators. Tech projects require team members with individual strengths to accomplish a goal, and that means plenty of communication between the colleagues and the clients. So communication is especially important in agile teams, where group members work together to quickly solve problems. And a key strength of agile is the ability to correct issues on the fly, but it doesn't work well if team members have not cultivated the ability to not only communicate problems, but voice potential solutions. Being approachable and friendly and open may not seem like much of a job skill, but is a characteristic that can take you a very long way. Willing to help others is a key part of what makes technology teams successful. So every team member needs approachability to be able to share their skills with each other, and feel free to ask and help for advice whenever they need it. Problem solving, again, and critical thinking. Tech careers often focus on finding innovative ways to solve problems using technology and fixing bugs within technology itself. So it comes as no surprise that critical thinking and problem solving are top technology skills. So well-rounded, valuable technology talent will be able to decipher and critically examine user stories from their source, which is obviously the user, to get a greater understanding of the problem that they're going to solve. So I have a little bit about skills. And then I found this actually a few months ago on LinkedIn, someone posted, and I thought it was quite cool because it gave you a really good visual of the, a sample skill set for the specialist skills for a full stack developer. So whereas you've got your front end skills and you've got all your bits in between your back end skills. So that's actually quite a useful wee diagram, a bit like a hamburger. Job interview tips. So it's always nerve-wracking, I know that, for a job interview. I interview people every day for different roles we have for our clients, and you just got to feel at ease. So job interview questions can vary greatly. I've written myself some notes, so I haven't got it all on my screen, so give me a second. And the interviewers asking the questions can have a manner that ranges from very distant and diligent to a far more relaxed and casual. So everybody's got a different interviewing technique. So here are some sample interview questions that could help you know what you can expect. So different types of things like behavioural questions. Someone might ask you, Jimmy, describe a time when you showed initiative in your workplace, and you're like, oh, no idea, what did I do? So these type of questions ask you to reach back into your own history, to relay a time when you have behaved in a certain way. So they're designed to give the interviewer an idea of how you act in the future, based on your past. So make sure you've memorized some vital positive moments in your career that you're proud to bring up and tell that potential future employer about. Situational questions, something like, how would you manage a large workload with the same deadlines? I mean, this happens to all of us, and you're kind of like, oh, what do I do first? Everything's all due at the same time, and it kind of becomes a bit of a panic situation. So I guess situational questions are similar to behavioural questions. However, they compel you to speak about how you would deal with a particular issue in the future. This often requires common sense. So make sure you always tailor your questions so the employer feels your response would benefit the company. Competency and ability questions. So it's always a hard one when people ask you, what are your strong points? Because no one ever likes talking about themselves. I was just having this conversation just earlier with one of my colleagues, and Dunedin, and he's like, don't like talking about myself because we were getting them to write something to intro themselves. So I guess like that, when asked questions about your ability, you need to avoid bragging. Instead, give 3 of your strong points and how they benefited previous employers, focusing on answers that would be a benefit to the company you're interviewing for. Communication and cultural fit. So quite often, potential employers would ask you, how do you think your colleagues would describe you? And that's always a tricky one as well. So they really want to know about your interpersonal skills and how you work within a team. So your answer will give them a sense of whether you'd be a good cultural fit for their team. You could say something like, my colleagues tell me that I'm a good listener, or I'm easygoing and tolerant of others. Yes, just little things like that. Salary questions. So I would never bring up a salary in a first interview unless you were asked about it. So it's quite a difficult question, salary. And it's important you come prepared by taking the time to research the salaries and how much you think you're worth. If you were pleased with your previous salary, you may want to state this as like a ballpark type figure and express your willingness to negotiate if landing this particular job is more important than the money aspect of the role. Here's some other interview tips. In a phone interview, quite often you'll have a phone screening interview with like an HR recruitment person. You need to be really clear and concise in your answers, as you haven't got the luxury of sitting in front of them face to face. So that's going to really help you stand out. Practice makes perfect. So, get a friend or a flatmate or your partner, practice interviewing with them. As silly as it may seem, it does help you. If you don't get the job, learn from it by politely asking for feedback in an email as opposed to the phone, so you don't put the employer on the spot. And I know in my role, I hate giving people the bad news, but I always find out from my client why that person wasn't successful in gaining an interview, or if they were interviewing, why they weren't successful at the end, because I want to give people the feedback that's going to help them, next time they're in an interview situation. Now, one of my colleagues sent me this video yesterday about what you can wear to an interview, different types of ties. So it's just a little video that I'll just play, which is quite interesting. So I've got to try and figure out how to get out of that now. Sorry, just give me a second. I'll just go to the next one. So top interview tips that I can give you. So research the company and who will be interviewing you. So preparation is key. There's no point going to an interview with a company and they'll say, what do you know about the company, what we're doing? You're like, I don't know. That's not going to do you any favors at all. Refamiliarize yourself with the role and the job requirements and how it matches your skill set that you've got. Prepare a list of maybe 3 or 4 questions that you want to ask them. Dress neatly and be well groomed. And obviously that video I just showed you, how you dress is obviously depending on the role. I mean, if you're going for a senior like leadership role, you might want to wear a suit. I don't know, not many people wear suit and ties anymore. But a nice shirt and a nice dress trousers. It's always nice, to be dressed like that rather than jeans and t-shirt, which sometimes is too casual. So arrive a few minutes early. Make sure you maintain eye contact with the interviewers to show you're interested. If you can't answer a question, be honest and let them know. Not everybody knows everything. As I said earlier, don't discuss salary at the first interview unless you're asked. And remember the STAR method when answering behavioural questions, like what was the situation, what happened, like the task, what action did you take, and what results did you get? And always follow up with a thank you email to the recruiter or the interviewer. That was a polite thing to do. This is just a little video that Seek put out on interviewing, so I'll just play this to you guys as well.
Interviews are scary for everybody. Even if you're so used to interviewing someone, as we are in HR, I still get the same. I'm nervous now.
I don't think it's a bad thing to admit. If you're excited about a role that you're going for, if you're a little bit nervous, I don't think there's anything wrong with telling them, say, look, sorry, I'm a bit nervous, but I'm really excited about this opportunity. And I actually did that in the previous interview.
I interview a lot of people, and a lot of them, are really nervous at the start of an interview, and it takes 15 minutes or so for them to warm up and relax, and it is normal. You get that confidence by doing as much preparation as homework as you can at the outset. So if you sit down before an interview, write your list of questions they will ask you, write your selling points, and think of examples that are relevant to the job you apply for, and all that pre-work will help you be less nervous.
Even though with a lot of my friends, I'll make them sit down and we'll do role plays and practice interviews.
Get a copy of the position description for the role that you are applying for and understand what the key responsibilities of the role are, but also what the skills and experience needed for the role are, so that you can kind of try and think about some of the questions that might be asked of you in the interview.
When I asked a couple of questions based on my research, I could see that they were impressed that I'd done that work.
This potential new employer really wants to see the real you. They don't want to see somebody who's pretending to be you or you're not being authentic.
Anything you didn't know, I was more than happy to sort of admit that I didn't know it. I think honesty is the main sort of part there. You know what you know, and I just took that approach and went from there. Really.
Go in and just remember the person on the other side of the table is human. And HR or the hiring manager who you're talking to, they're not scary people generally. They just want the right person for the role.
So if you come across as somebody who's really enthusiastic, who's not too verbose, so that you're giving crisp and compelling responses, then that's going to help you come across in the best possible light. It's not just the company or interviewing you for the position. You are trying to work out whether or not this is right for you as well.
If you've got someone you know or an organisation you can go to where you can build those skills up, particularly if you're young and maybe not had an opportunity, there are organisations out there who will help you prepare and get you ready so that you can put your best self forward for that interview process.
Cool, so that was quite a good wee video there. So that actually brings to the end of my presentation. So I'll stop sharing the screen, and if anybody's got any questions, you're most welcome to ask them. You might have to unmute yourself, so unless Neil unmutes everybody.
Well, you can. There's a small group, so everyone can do it themselves. There's just a couple of things that I thought I'd reinforce. I keep banging on about the technology industry really being about a people industry. People make the mistake of thinking it's about the technology, but people develop technology, people use technology, people support technology. Therefore, don't take your eye off the ball when it comes to interviews are about people as well. People interview for roles. So this is very much a people industry, and the soft or transferable skills are really, really important to building a career. Sure, the harder skills of specific languages or network equipment or whatever role you're going for can be important in the short term. They're what employers often look for in the short term to fill a specific vacancy. But what makes you a productive worker is those soft and transferable skills, because you'd be working alongside other people, and everyone likes to work with people that fit in, know how to communicate, and are good workers in a team, not brilliant individualists. They're a thing of the past. And after a couple or 3 years where I haven't personally been recruiting for roles. I have a couple recently, and it's reinforced to me that one of the roles we've got about 60 applications for, and about 40 of them on paper could have probably done a really good job of it. So when I'm screening cover letters and CVs, I'm actually not looking for ways to put you on the short list. I'm looking for ways to exclude you. How do I exclude you from my thinking? So I'm looking for poor grammar. You know, it can be as simple as poor grammar, poor English, a lack of thought gone into the cover letter. It's something that's clearly generic, and you're just pumping out the applications for multiple roles each week, and just show a lack of thought about tailoring a cover letter and tailoring a CV. What's your stance, Rachel, on tailoring CVs for roles?
Yeah, it is important. You want to kind of want to, as I said earlier, you know, you want to put things that are relevant in there. And obviously, it's quite good to see people how they've built their career in tech, starting maybe at the bottom and work their way, you know, progress their way to the top. And then I'd leave, like on my CV, like back when I finished school, I worked in a supermarket. And, you know, 3 years, I left that off my CV because it's not really relevant, you know, to like show my age, but, you know, like 25, 30 years ago, where you know, where you used to be. Yeah, it's always good to have relevant things. And also one thing, I guess, yeah, as a parent, if you've had time off work, yeah, a career gap. You know, you might have had time off work, you know, to, you know, if you're a woman, to have children, for example, or you might have been looking after an elderly relative or something, and it's quite hard for people to put that on their CVs that they weren't, you know, leaving a gap. And I think a gap always looks really bad in a CV, and the advice I've given people is, you know, be honest, put that on your CV, you know, and your work history, put the dates with actually what you were doing. So then when the recruiter or the hiring manager or HR person or whoever is looking at it, they can say, oh, okay, that person had a year off because they had a child, or, you know, you might have been on parental leave, or you were looking after a relative. So you can actually see rather than you were unemployed for a year type thing.
Mm. And
I mean,
the other
honesty
thing,
is the best policy.
and the other thing, another thing I'd say is if you haven't worked in tech before, but you might have had other jobs, it could be stacking shelves at Pack and Save, or roles in community organisations. Try and bring that into your CV and make it relevant. Yeah, that's where some of the transferable
Absolutely.
skills come from. Working in a crew at a supermarket requires some team skills and communication. So, you know, that is relevant if you don't have other technical roles to draw on.
No, absolutely. Yep. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question. So it's been a while since I've been looking out for opportunities. So what I've learned is we need to tailor our CV and cover letter focusing on the job description, right? So
Yep.
I started off my career working as a test analyst. So
Mhm.
now I'm looking out for opportunities as a data and business analyst. I'm also worked back in the past as a data and business analyst. So let's say if there is a job which I'm targeting for, and it is a role of data analyst. So my past experience have I worked as a test analyst in the past. So do I need to put that in the CV as in the role
Absolutely.
for data analyst? Because if I don't, then it would question my integrity, because the recruiter would look up my profile on LinkedIn and he might say that the test analyst is not over here in the CV, but his LinkedIn shows up the test analyst's experience. So how does that work? I mean,
Yeah, you do need to put it, and that's actually quite a good question, because as recruiters, we do look at LinkedIn as well.
right.
And it's always really important to make sure that your LinkedIn matches what is on your CV.
Right.
Because quite often, yeah, I'll get someone's CV and I was like, oh, that person looks amazing. And I'll look at them on LinkedIn and went,
Right.
that doesn't quite match what you're telling me you've done.
Hmm.
So you've got to, you know, have that conversation, especially employers do that as well.
Right.
You know, I know some of my clients, they'll have a look on LinkedIn and they'll go, oh, Rachel, this person said they did this, but it's why have they got it on their CV, but they don't have it on their LinkedIn? Because that is quite a powerful tool as well. You know, of trying to sell yourself
Right.
on there. And yeah, if you are looking for a role as well, LinkedIn have the new open to opportunities thing. You can put that on there, which means you'll come up in searches when people are searching for people.
Okay. Okay. So it's safe to put in the testing experience
Absolutely.
along with the data analysis experience, right? Okay. All right.
But I mean, many of us tread fairly windy paths in our tech careers. So if you were in test and now you've moved into a different area, then tell a little story about why that is. And you know, I decided to move into a different area of technology. You know, a CV is partly about storytelling. Sure, there's some facts in it, but tell a little story about your journey.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So Neil, if I can jump in, because I agree completely with you, and Rachel, I think you've done a fantastic summary. But to give Nicole some feedback as well, is for me, and I've hired about 400 people over the last 10 years, it is about the story. I don't do a behavioral style interview because I'm really not interested in people's past performance. I'm more interested in their potential to learn, because most of us in tech have very unique products which you will never have worked on before. So previous behaviors won't necessarily lend themselves. So what I'm looking for are those, we keep referring to them, the soft skills, but what I look for is curiosity, for passion, the potential to learn, problem solving, all those sort of skills. And I've hired people who've had pure maths backgrounds and can't code, and I've taught them to code because they've got that right sort of that drive to learn. So for me, as Neil pointed out, that story is so important, to talk through your journey of what you've learned and why you're wanting to make this move into a new career, and how the learnings from your past are going to actually help and contribute to your new career. So it's vital that you include that history, because that for me would be a standout on a CV.
It comes back to people, doesn't it? It's people hire people. So a job candidate is just not just a set of technical skills. It's an individual that needs to fit into a role within a larger team to do work, and that's why, you know, many of us that work in tech over a long period and recruit in some way or another keep going on about transferable skills and these attributes and skills that can be applied in many different ways. And that's a lot of what employers look for. Sure, they look for, you know, Cisco router experience if it's a networking role, or some particular JavaScript framework if it's a front-end developer's role. But can you work in a team? Are you curious? Are you going to learn? Because JavaScript frameworks come and go. They're in vogue for 18 months and then they disappear and on to the next one. So they don't have, they don't persist. They don't have endurance. But transferable skills do.
So Neil, you've also just flagged for me an interesting one tied in with that. With the mentorees, I knew somebody in the industry who was looking for, I think it was a technical writing skill set. And what we sometimes do, I think, is not necessarily good. When we're looking for candidates, we have a checklist. And particularly if you're a youngster or a graduate with not much experience, you will work through that checklist and say, I can do 9 out of 10 of those things, but I can't do all of them, therefore I'm not going to apply. And I had a long chat with this mentoree because they had a very interesting background, which they might not have ever even done technical writing before. But because of their background, they actually had a unique insight, which I thought would appeal to the employer. And they were hesitant about applying for the position because the position said we need somebody with 2 years experience. And they'd written themselves out of the process. And I think something we haven't really covered here is we've looked at it very much from the company side, but it's got to come from the candidate side. So you've also got to look at the industry and say, what excites me? Am I interested in the aeronautical tech sector, which is just so exciting at the moment in Christchurch? Or am I interested in manufacturing technology? Or am I interested in medical, biomedical? So also find an interest, an industry or an environment that appeals to your skills so that you can ask lots of questions for you to decide if this is a company you want to work for, because that will also help you customize your CV. But this is not always just about the employer. It's about you guys finding what you want to do that's going to make you excited about coming to work every day, and you will then be a fantastic member of a team.
That's right. You have to remember, as a prospective employee, you actually do have some power. It might seem very imbalanced at times that the employer has the majority of the power, and that's probably right and logical, but you do actually have some power. The employer is looking for the right candidate, so don't ignore that. And be clear about who you are and the sort of role that you actually want. Be clear about, Neil, who am I as a person, and why would an employer be interested in me? If you don't have clarity on that, then employers spot that a mile away. Questions?
Anyone else?
I think Heather has nearly tried to answer my question. The question that I had was, how, as a candidate, how do you try to convince the recruiter or the interviewee about your inquisitivity or the empathy? As a person, you are empathetic. So how do you showcase those skills in the interview? That was my question. I mean, how do you try to convince? I mean, is there a way you can convince them that you, as a person, you are empathetic, you are inquisitive to learn things, you are very curious, you are passionate?
Okay, so Neil, can I jump in here? Rachel, can I give this a go? I've got a story that's one of my favorites. Is I was interviewing a recent graduate from Canterbury University, and I asked him to tell me a story about a project that he'd worked on that he was particularly passionate about. And he told me that when he was about 12, he grew up on a farm down south near Invercargill. So it was very rural, very remote. And he was a radio ham enthusiast. So I don't know if you know anything about radio ham. It's sort of old-fashioned radio technologies. Neil, you might be able to answer what radio ham is a bit better than me. Sorry, shall I start my video? Sorry. So anyway, he told me at 12 he was a radio ham enthusiast, and what he did was he managed to do some odd jobs around the farm so that he could afford to buy the tools and equipment that he needed to build his own radio ham. And then because he couldn't get into range, he had to make it portable enough so that he could carry it on his bicycle, so that he could cycle down the road to find a place that he could pick up a signal. Now, that little story told me he was a problem solver. He had a passion. He could stick to something through to completion. All right. It told me that during that process, he would have had to interact with other people to help solve problems. He also had to self-learn. Now, this he did at 12, and he's now 23, 24 years old. That story told me all sorts of things about his soft skills that he would never have been able to tell me if he just said to me, look, I enjoy working with people, or I think I'm a very good communicator because I was a member of a debating society. So getting back to Neil's comment earlier, in the tech sector, the stories are so important. So think back to projects you've worked on that you're passionate about. What did you learn? What did you break? It doesn't matter if the project worked or didn't work. It's how you tell the story is telling me how you communicate as well.
Right.
So don't try and persuade me that you're a good communicator, because you can't do that. Don't rate yourself on your CV that you're a 9 out of 10 Java developer, because you're not. So it's more about the storytelling and how you came to learn Java, because it helped you solve a problem, and what worked and what didn't. that for me is more important than you trying to persuade me that you can do something.
Yeah, if you're telling
All right.
if you're telling a story about applying some technical skill, then bring it to life. You know, delighted customers, growth in sales. That's what brings it to life. Just delivering a project is actually not very interesting.
Mm. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Anybody else? Come on, don't be shy. Have a go.
Got two newbies joined when we were on the presentation. So Gagandeep and Chanaya. Did you have any questions?
I know some people join when they're at work and they might not be able
Yeah.
to talk, so that may be the case.
So Rachel, just a quick question from my side, because it's a question I hate, is when I'm asked to give feedback of why an application is unsuccessful.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is incredibly difficult because it is just not a culture fit, and we haven't mentioned the word culture in this presentation. And it's a big. I get nervous with giving feedback because it often can turn into character assassination. So Nicole, don't worry if your application isn't successful. It's not because you are incompetent or useless. It's just simply, it's not necessarily the right position for you, and you've got an escape clause of not having to try and have to get out of that company at some stage because it was a terrible misfit. For me, a successful interview is when the candidate and I can reach agreement together in the interview that perhaps the position isn't right for them, because we've had an adult conversation around what are they looking for, what do they want out of their careers in life, and can I as an employer give that to them? And sometimes I can't, and therefore it's not a natural fit. So don't get upset or despondent if a position doesn't work out.
Yeah, I'll come back to my example I mentioned earlier, where 60 applications, probably 35 people could do the job on paper. I can't interview 35 people, so I have to make a call about creating a 5-person shortlist. There's going to be a lot of good people missing out on that job just because, you know, I deemed them, they didn't put a full stop at the end of a sentence. You know, I'm looking for ways to exclude them. So don't get too downcast if you don't get an interview, but try and learn something from it where you're able to. That's what your cover letter and CV is, to get you to interview. The process almost starts again. It's you're then having a conversation with a person or people, so you can be more yourself and just convey to them who you are and why you're interested in this role and why you think you'd be a good fit for it, but also come armed with some questions as well. There's nothing worse as an interviewer than asking, have you got any questions for me? And the answer is no. Well, that's just not acceptable. That means you haven't done your homework.
Yeah, and then you get back in your car and you're like, oh damn, I should have asked that question. It happens every time. I've done that myself. Yes, you've got to be prepared.
How much importance do you give to the visa status of a particular candidate? Because I'm asking this because I've been rejected for many applications only because of visa status. I've been able to tick all the boxes. I know this because on Seek, when we apply towards the end, we get a questionnaire where one of the questions is what is the visa status, and when you get rejected, you also get how many candidates were able to answer that question, which was matched by the recruiter's expected answer. So that was the only question which I missed out, and hence I have been able to not make it my way into the interviews so far. So I'm just trying to gauge your understanding behind this particular situation.
Yeah, depends. At the moment, we are still getting a lot of applications from overseas applicants, and obviously our borders are closed. Immigration is not going to give a visa; it's just not going to happen. So we've got to go back to them.
Yeah.
There's another one, like one of my colleagues is working with a candidate at the moment. It's a permanent role, but his particular visa type, he's on like a 3-year or 2-year working visa or something.
Right.
It won't work because he's on a fixed term visa.
Right.
For that, yeah, each situation is very, very different. We do work with an immigration agency that I'll go to them and ask them for advice to make sure we're giving the right information to the person before.
Okay.
Look, it's a tricky subject, but
It's hard at the moment.
there is no denying that it's an additional hurdle that has to be overcome between a candidate that requires a visa and an employer that might have to do some work to help land that visa. So some employers, not all, but some employers will see it as a major negative. Others not so much. Look, it's a gross generalization, but generally the larger employers are better set up to handle visa situations and tend to be more open to dealing with that. Smaller employers, 5 or 10 person companies, they may never have dealt with this before, so it's easy for them, frankly, to say, oh, visa issue, they go on the no pile. I don't know what advice I can give other than be honest about your situation and fight really hard for it.
Yeah.
It's
I think the least and maximum I can do is try till
yeah,
the time in this country. So I don't want to leave this country without regrets. So that is all right.
yeah. It's and maybe look, I don't know what's going to happen over the post-COVID period. There'll be fewer international candidates arriving in New Zealand, so maybe that's a good thing for those of you already in the country. There are also New Zealanders arriving back in New Zealand, and they might be seen as an easier option by employers. It's a difficult situation. Look, originally I arrived as a software developer from the UK on a temporary visa. Okay, that was 30 years ago. The landscape was a little different back then, but I am familiar with the issue. Don't give up.
Yeah.
So Neil, if I can offer my little input on this, I used to love it when other companies declined candidates because of that, because it gave me a competitive edge. And the end of it was we ended up with an incredibly diverse and exciting culturally diverse team, which was one of the joys that I had. Was I got to scour the globe because of the kind of people we were hiring. So the trick is, again, to find the right sort of company works for you. And if that's not going to work, that's okay. You walk away, because there is a company out there that's right for you. But remember, this is all changing. When is it? March next year, when it's becoming easier and easier for small tech companies to become accredited employers. So at the moment, unfortunately, because of COVID, it's all just up in the air. But it actually is really easy for employers if you've got the right qualifications and skill sets to actually help people through the immigration process. This country is fantastic, but it takes those of us foreigners to know how easy it is, because where we come from, it's all a lot harder. So
right, exactly.
I love it because it gave me a competitive edge. But Neil's right in that some people, it's just more work if they don't have the resources to manage it. So again, was that the right company for you? Maybe not. So move on, find the right company. It's out there.
That's key. That's key. Go do your research on the companies that have more of a multicultural mix and are openly more willing to recruit people from diverse backgrounds. So inevitably, you're more likely to get a job there. Some employers are not that. They're just not that. So you're going to forever fight an uphill battle with them.
Right. That's a fair advice.
I'm not sure how helpful it is, but shall we wrap? Shall we stop? I, for one, need to be elsewhere. Sorry.
Okay.
So,
If anyone's got any questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I hope that's been useful. Thank you, Rachel, and also Heather for joining.
Rachel,
Thank you so
fantastic
much.
presentation, because I know how difficult it is, so well done.
Yeah, good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Neil. Bye, guys.